everyone, and welcome to my latest podcast. I'm Lauren Loves Movies, and I am currently on my 7th year on YouTube for this channel. So I decided to create a Q&A podcast. So if you guys have any questions for me while I sort of go through some things that I have planned for you guys, just definitely leave them in the comments, and I'll try to answer them throughout the show. So let's get started with my first round of business. And so I decided to come up with my top 10 best and worst list of movies that I have reviewed over the course of my being on the channel. And I kind of want to start this off on a good note by talking about my best list. Now, I was actually finding it very difficult to come up with some of the best because I've literally seen so many movies, and it's really hard to choose exactly which ones are my favorites among everything that I have seen. And so I'd like to start off with my number 10. And it is for a little movie called Lion. Now, if you haven't seen this movie, it's been out for a few years now, and it's actually a very, I guess it's a true story that I felt like was a very moving film, and it stars Dev Patel, and he actually plays the adult version of this child who ended up getting lost on this train and stuck on this train in India. And I loved it because it was based off of a true story, and just seeing this journey from being this small child and then eventually getting adopted into this family in Australia, and then having to grow up and then find a way back to his roots. And I actually loved this movie, and I feel like I've seen it a few times now, where I just really enjoy watching it. And I really can't say enough. So if you guys haven't seen this movie, I would highly recommend it. And it's a tearjerker. I definitely remember crying a few times while watching the movie. So let's see. We've got some, hey, Justin. And I will go to my number 9. And for my best list, my number 9, this was very hard. I was having a hard time coming up with something to put on my number 9 throughout the entire top 10 list. And it is for Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Now, I just really enjoyed watching this movie. And of course, I'm a huge Star Wars fan in general. So liking Rogue One, a Star Wars story, I thought it was just one of those crazy films that came out, because it's not technically it's a prequel and it's a sequel in a way, but it also felt really different but consistent with the rest of the Star Wars movies. And I loved the tone and the feel of this movie. And of course, the ending, I would say, the ending was so jaw-dropping. I was like, I cannot wait to see what comes next. Oh, it's A New Hope. And just seeing that transition, it makes me want to watch the movies in chronological order instead of, when they actually were released, which I know is usually what a lot of people do. But I don't know. What do you guys do when you watch Star Wars movies? Do you watch them in chronological order from when they were released, or from ranking to the prequels all the way to the ones that are currently out right now? Oh, and don't even get me started on the new Star Wars movie that's coming out this December, because that is going to be a game changer. So I don't know what J.J. Abrams has planned for that movie, but oh my gosh, who's excited for episode 9? I definitely can't wait to see that movie come out. And I remember when I saw the trailer to Rise of Skywalker, I was like, okay, who's the Skywalker? Is it going to be Kylo Ren, or is it going to secretly be Rey? J.J. Abrams, what have you done? Because seriously, the episode 7, they made it completely obvious that something is obviously up with her character, and then The Last Jedi came out, and it kind of hurt my heart a little bit because of not getting a lot of questions answered. And man, episode 9, do not disappoint me. Otherwise, I will probably put you on my worst list of films for 2019. So who knows, but we'll see. So for my number 8, it is also for a movie that I actually had on my best list of last year, and it was for The Hate U Give. And this is another movie I would highly recommend seeing. I feel like it's been missing throughout the entire awards circuit when all these other movies that were sort of Oscar baity came out, and then this one sort of fell under the radar. But it's definitely a movie you should check out, and it's another one of those moving, powerful films. And it's definitely got some content in there that I feel like is very telling of, what we're going through in today's society. And I'm not trying to get too deep in conversation about it, but it looks like it's one of those movies that really would stick with you. And I've definitely been impacted by that movie. So if you haven't seen that movie, really go see it in any way that you can, because it's one not to miss. Now, for my number 7, this is a movie that I got this on Blu-ray a few Christmases ago, and I feel bad. I still haven't watched it, and every year I keep telling myself I'm going to watch this movie because it actually looked so glorious, and it's got the best cinematography around, and it is for The Revenant. And obviously Leo DiCaprio won his first Oscar for this movie, and I just really loved the cinematography, the acting, and Tom Hardy's in it. The director is one of my favorite directors of all time, and it was just one of those movies that, I mean, it almost feels like it would drag on a bit just because it's so quiet most of the time. But then once the action picks up, I mean, it gets pretty crazy. And obviously, I just love Leo. I'm not trying to fangirl for Leo DiCaprio, but I just loved him in this movie. I think it is one of his best movies around. I don't know. I feel like I have other favorites of Leo's that I also enjoyed. I loved Inception. Obviously, I loved Titanic, What's Eating Gilbert Grape. And I don't know. I feel like there's not too many other movies that I liked him in. I mean, Wolf of Wall Street was a hit or miss for me. I mean, it was okay. I don't know. What did you guys think of Wolf of Wall Street? And yeah, so I feel like he's definitely deserved that Oscar, and he's earned it. So I'm not too disappointed. And I'm pretty sure another favorite actor of mine was up for an Oscar for Best Actor that year, and I was slightly disappointed. I think wasn't it Christian Bale, I think. Obviously, you guys know I'm a huge Christian Bale fan. That I love seeing him win Oscars too. He's won a few for The Fighter, and then I think he won for something else, or at least he was up for Best Actor because he won for Best Supporting Actor. But yeah, I think The Revenant was a pretty good movie to see Leo win for, and it's about damn time. So, all right. So for my number 6 best movies is for 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Oh, and I'm looking at my notes here. And so the ratings, so far the ratings that I gave my number 10 through 7 are all 5s. So for Lion, I gave a 5 out of 5 to. Rogue One, I gave a 4 out of 5 to. The Hate U Give, I gave a 5 out of 5, and then The Revenant, of course, got a perfect score as well. And so for Three Boards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, I definitely enjoyed watching this movie because it's like one of those movies that has a mix of genres. I mean, it was definitely comical, and it had some pretty good performances in there. The writing was spectacular, and even the cinematography as well. And of course, speaking of acting, Frances McDormand won her Oscar for this movie, and I really enjoyed her performance in Three Billboards. And it was just such it was a heartbreaking story, but it was just it's another one of those moving and powerful films. I guess you're kind of seeing a pattern here that I'm starting to like a lot of moving Oscar baity type films, but not like too much. I mean, I can definitely tell which movies are going to be Oscar contenders, with the exception of The Hate U Give, which I was kind of hoping had more traction in the Oscar circuit, but Three Billboards I think it's one of the best movies ever made, and I think it is just too good. I have not seen the original Ben-Hur, but I have seen the remake. That was so disappointing. Blade Runner, I love that as well, and of course, Batman, the Tim Burton Batman. I loved that movie as well. And so yeah, Three Billboards. If you guys haven't seen that, definitely check that out, like right now. So for my number 5 best films, it is for Whiplash. Now, I had to put this in here. It was actually, when I was compiling this list together, Whiplash was literally the first movie that I came up with, because I was like, okay, this movie had some really good acting, J.K. Simmons, and the story I also felt was really cool as well. And of course, I'm a huge fan of music and playing the drums, so I really liked just everything that was going on in this movie. I was meaning to watch it recently, but a few times I was like, okay, I'm putting it off. And so I definitely have to rewatch it again, because it is so good. And I think it has some of the best scenes in it where it just leaves you on the edge of your seat and holding your breath, because like the one scene where J.K. Simmons is just going like full beast mode on oh gosh, what's his name? Miles Teller, and just like telling him to like keep being on the beat and on tempo. And I just found that scene to be so powerful, and it was just really cool. Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame. You'll have to wait and see. Oh yeah, Sam Rockwell also got an Oscar for that. He was so good. There's actually this show that's on FX, I think, and that's also with what's her name? I'm like having a brain fart right now. What is her name? Michelle Williams. And I haven't seen it yet, but I think it might be very interesting. I was wondering, and that was actually, I'm pretty sure, the show that caused him to shave his head. So that's why you saw him at the latest Oscars with no hair. So it was because it was for that role for that show on FX. So I haven't seen it yet. I don't know if you guys have. But yeah, FX has some really good things going on there. I liked American Horror Story and Archer. I liked watching that as well. I stopped watching it probably just because TV shows don't always interest me. It depends on the show. Yes, thank you, Victor. That's the name of the show. I was like, yes, that's the show I definitely need to see. Oh, and also another show, because Netflix has been putting some of the shows that were canceled on TV on their platform, like Designated Survivor, that just got a 3rd season, and it was released today, so I'm definitely going to try to watch that. And Lucifer also got picked up for another season, but it's also a final season. And I'm very sad, but it was a very good show, so definitely check those out. I would highly recommend them. But I feel like Netflix's original stuff, I'm not too impressed with. I mean, it's a hit or miss for me sometimes. Some of the stuff that I've seen recently just doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't impress me. I don't know. What do you guys think are your favorites Netflix to watch? So you guys can let me know what your favorite shows to watch on Netflix are. And for my number 4 best films, it is for It Follows. Oh, Whiplash got a 4.5 out of 5. And so for It Follows, I don't know if you guys have seen this movie, but it is one of the craziest concepts of a movie ever. I mean, I've seen movies with some pretty interesting concepts. I mean, this movie had this like horror vibe to it, but it was also kind of suspenseful, and the soundtrack was also pretty impressive as well, where you have these teenagers who, I guess, as soon as they're like doing something, like they have people like these really creepy like ghost-like people following them everywhere, and they're like just like doing it in their car, and like I don't know, it's just like so crazy. And then they have to find somebody else to screw, and then they get rid of the monsters that are following them everywhere, and like they like almost look like they can't be defeated. But I don't want to spoil too much, but it is just a really cool movie. I don't know how many times I've seen it. Probably like 2 or 3, maybe 4 times. I've lost count, to be honest. And yeah, so I feel like It Follows is one of those movies. It's kind of, I forgot like who was it, A24 that came up with It Follows, because it just, I'm like absolutely speechless talking about It Follows because it's just so amazing. Which is your favorite MCU movie? I did love Endgame, but I also loved Black Panther and Infinity War. So who knows? I don't know. I can't wait to see what happens with the MCU's future after this. So I don't know what kind of movies they're planning on coming out with next. But speaking of a Marvel film, my number and It Follows was 3 out of 5. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting what I've like rated all of these movies. I like had this whole thing planned out. And so for my number 3 best films is for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And actually this is kind of a twofer. I was very conflicted on what to put for my number 3. So I have 2. And so I have Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and then I have Logan. So okay, thank you. I was really confused about I was trying to think where who distributed It Follows. So these 2 comic book movies I felt like were just I mean they were all impressive in their own way because they're so different. Well, first of all, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, I mean, that is an animated film that is unlike anything I've ever seen, and I feel like a lot of people haven't seen this type of animation before, and I felt like it was just very innovative and impressive, and the storytelling, it really felt like it was popping right out of a comic book, and it was just seeing this character be combined with all these other Spider-Man characters from the comics. And I felt like it was very impressive. And I was really engaged and drawn into this story. And I wouldn't say I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, but I did love the concept and just seeing what they were going to do with this character who, actually, it was Miles Morales Spider-Man. And even though they did feature Peter Parker, he wasn't the main player in this movie, and it was really cool to see some change. So Marvel can technically pull off something different than we have ever seen before, because all the previous Spider-Man movies were purely Peter Parker Spider-Man. So I thought it was just really cool, and it actually won I feel like it won an Oscar, if I'm not mistaken, and it definitely made my best list of 2018 because it was just, I don't know, it was so cool. And it's like one of those movies that I feel like will go down in history as one of the best animated films of all time. So it's like, even though you have the Disney films and the Pixar films and the DreamWorks films and Blue Sky Studios, I mean, this one was definitely a different type of movie, but it's a different in a good way. And I actually like that aspect of that. And so for Logan, I loved this movie. And originally, I didn't think I was going to love it, but because this was the final performance of Hugh Jackman as this character that he's played since, I don't even know, like before 2000. I mean, this was such a long time that he's played this character, and it was just like, I can't honestly picture anybody else playing this role better than Hugh Jackman. And I feel like this movie, I mean, obviously I cried by the end of it. And I don't know how many of you guys, I don't want to spoil anything if you guys haven't seen it, but if you haven't, go see this movie, because this is a movie that also felt like a different type of movie. I mean, it was a comic book character starring in a movie that didn't really feel exactly comic booky. I mean, the tone and the feel of it was just very different and a westerny type of feel, and it was set in the future, and you have Old Man Logan, and you've got Charles Xavier, and Daphne Keane, I thought was also really impressive in this movie as well. I'm pretty sure, I think I saw Daphne Keane was going to be in this other upcoming movie, and it looked really cool. I'm trying to remember what the name of it was, but I just thought she was a very impressive actress, and I want to see more of her character from Logan to be featured in future films. So I don't know if because of the Disney Fox deal, and I don't know if they're going to just forget all of that and just recast everybody, especially after Dark Phoenix. I have to see that movie, and I'm planning on seeing it, so I don't know when I'm going to get my review out for it, because I've got a whole bunch of stuff going on this weekend, but I definitely want to see it because I want to see how this whole X-Men thing ends, because this was all just pretty crazy over the years, seeing these X-Men movies almost turn into prequels, and then they become their own thing, and then where does it go from there besides being rebooted completely? And so yeah, I gave Logan a 5 out of 5, and I probably wouldn't give it anything less than that, to be honest. So all right, so for my number 2 best films of the year, it is for Wonder Woman. And if you guys have followed my channel, or you've probably seen some of the other podcasts that I've hosted or have been a part of, I have been dubbed Wonder Woman by a lot of my fellow YouTubers and friends alike. So I really enjoyed this movie and seeing this character brought to the big screen. And I was really impressed with Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, and obviously she was first featured in Batman v Superman, and I actually was going to put Batman v Superman on my best list, and I definitely feel like this movie was a far more impressive film than Batman v Superman. I still enjoy Batman v Superman, but Wonder Woman really just set the bar high. You've got your first female superhero getting her in the DC universe, getting her own film, and then you've got Patty Jenkins directing it, and I mean, it just really paves the way for future superhero films. I mean, I know we have Captain Marvel on the Marvel side, but Wonder Woman did first, so I really loved everything about this movie, even though the third act could have been cleaned up a little bit better, and there might have been some like nitpicky CGI things that I noticed, but I still think overall I was really impressed with this movie. I was also moved by this movie. I feel like the no man's land scene was perfect. Seeing the opening scene on the island with all the women and seeing them all like training and stuff, like I just thought all that just it felt so like good to see that female energy and that female power, just really like them being strong, and seeing Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman. I mean, like I don't think I could picture anybody else playing her, and I can't wait to see the Wonder Woman 1984 movie, which comes out a year from yesterday. And if you guys have seen that poster, I don't know what you guys think of it, but it was so psychedelic and trippy, and I just loved it. So I can't wait to see what they do with this movie. I want to see Kristen Wiig's look as Cheetah, and she plays a villain in that movie. And I want to see a trailer. I have seen the footage that they showed at Comic-Con last year. And also speaking of Comic-Con, DC is not going to be at Comic-Con this year, and also by extension, Warner Brothers is not presenting anything at Comic-Con. So I was a little bit disappointed because I wanted to see something DC related, and now I can't. So I don't know. Do you guys like Comic-Con? Have you ever been to Comic-Con? Do you want to go to Comic-Con? I actually heard from a few people who went to Comic-Con saying that it's really not that great. And it sucks because I always thought it'd be really cool to go to one of the panels or a couple of them and get a sneak peek at some of the films coming out, but they're all just going to release their trailers online eventually. So I'm not too disappointed at not being able to go, but I still think I can't wait to see what Warner Brothers and DC does, and seeing Wonder Woman again on the big screen. But man, I have a few things to say, which I'll probably mention a little bit later, on certain things from DC that I would like to see happen in the next year or two. So for my and also, I don't think I mentioned, did I mention what I gave Wonder Woman? I gave it a 5 out of 5. It was just an all-around perfect film for me. So now I'm sure you're wondering what I am planning on giving my number one best film of like all time that I've ever reviewed. And one of you might have already let it slip what it could have been. And I'm just going to say it. It's Avengers Endgame. I'm waiting for the applause, because that was just a movie that has been built up for the past 11 years. And I just found it to be super duper impressive. I mean, I can't say anything bad about Avengers Endgame. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, I have to show you this. So I have this poster that I was going to give away. I'm actually planning on giving it away to somebody who I know definitely deserves it. So, and I actually got that from the first like midnight screening or whatever for the movie, and I was like, okay, this is cool, but I don't really want it. So, but anyway, so this movie, I honestly think it deserves to be number one everywhere, and I know a lot of people are hoping that it is the number one at the all-time box office, and beating out movies like Avatar and Titanic would be bittersweet, I guess, for those who are hoping to see Marvel just take over the entire world, because I'm sure that it has already taken over the entire universe. And so, Endgame. What to say about Endgame? I cried watching it. Definitely cried a few times. And actually, I've been watching a few videos about Endgame, and every time I see something about certain people in the movie, I like bawl my eyes out. There's actually this one shirt that I want that's an I Love You 3000 shirt, and I definitely want to get it because it reminds me of my favorite character from the movie, Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, played by Robert Downey Jr. And I loved how just so enormous this movie was, and especially by the third act, I was really impressed. I mean, I keep listening to the soundtrack and listening to the Portals soundtrack, or the track from the movie soundtrack called Portals, and oh my god, it just blows my mind. And actually, speaking of which, I saw that somebody made a video using that track to the Lord of the Rings Return of the King in that one final battle scene, and I was like, this fits so perfectly, and it makes me want to watch Endgame once again. I mean, this was such a game changer of a movie. Like, literally, this movie had some of the like biggest cast members I've ever seen, and like all these big name actors in it. And I'm still speechless. I feel like I'm gonna start crying right now if I start thinking about Avengers Endgame. But it does make me wonder, where do they go from there? I mean, we have Spider-Man Far From Home coming out, and I am interested in seeing that movie, but then I'm thinking, okay, whatever else they have in development, I have to wait and see what Kevin Feige has up his sleeve, because the next phase of the MCU is going to be interesting. I mean, Black Widow has a movie coming out, which is a prequel. It's not a sequel, it's a prequel. And I'm not too impressed with the Black Widow movie coming out, just because it's like a long time coming, and I feel like, do we really need to see Black Widow? I feel like we already saw her origin in Avengers Age of Ultron. So who knows if they're just going to expand on that. And so we'll see what happens. But man, I loved Avatar when it came out. And it'll be really interesting to see if it actually does beat Avatar. And excuse me. And I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I have a lot of friends who hate James Cameron for whatever reason. So we'll see what happens at the end of all of this, if Endgame will beat Avatar. And oh my goodness, I don't know how many people would be really happy if it does, because Marvel's taking over, so it might as well be the top dog of the whole movie universe, and even waiting to see if it gets any sort of Oscar recognition, because I think it definitely deserves something. So, okay. All right. So, I know I hate to do this, but I have to talk about my worst list, and I'm not too impressed with it, but it was actually much easier to talk about my worst list than it is to talk about the best list. And so for my dishonorable mentions, it goes to a couple movies that it's been quite a few years since they came out, but I'm really glad that I haven't rewatched them since they came out. So yeah, so my first one, I'm just going to get to it because I really want to run through the worst list, because I doubt anybody wants to hear any sort of negativity coming from me. Am I right? So, Pixels. Who remembers a movie called Pixels? Now, that movie starred Adam Sandler. It starred Kevin James. It starred some hot chick. And it's about facing off against Pac-Man and all these other video game characters. Yeah, I am not too impressed with this movie whatsoever. Now, I don't really remember exactly what happened in this movie, but it really bothered me. And I'll say right now, I gave it a 1.5 out of 5. And I could have given it a whole lot less. There were some cool things about it, but most of the movie was pretty bad. So I just did not like Pixels. And I can't stop. I need to stop talking about Pixels. Let's move on. Who wants to see me move on? Oh my gosh. I'm just like, really? Okay, so My next dishonorable mentions is Ghostbusters 2016. I'm gonna let that marinate for a second because I just like I don't want to talk about Ghostbusters. Okay, so Ghostbusters, the movie that stars an all-female cast. We've got Kristen Wiig. We've got Melissa McCarthy. We've got Kate McKinnon. We've got Leslie Jones. And we also have Chris Hemsworth. So, and it's also directed by Paul Feig, you know, who did Bridesmaids, who did Spy, and probably a whole bunch of other movies that nobody really cares to talk about because they're just not that funny. But Ghostbusters, If you go on my channel, you'll see that I did a trailer reaction to Ghostbusters. It made like 40,000 views on there. And I'm just like, I was really shocked because I thought that nobody would really care, but apparently people do. But I thought like by the first trailer, I was just, nope, not impressed. So we'll see what happens when the new Ghostbusters movie comes out next year. Because now that one actually makes more sense because it has to do with the original Ghostbusters, which starred Bill Murray and all those other guys who are much cooler than these chicks. And also this movie was trying to send some kind of message that we need this female empowerment. We need to have an all-female cast to, you know, be impressive and resonate with the audience, but not to me. I was not impressed. So that's why I gave this movie a 1 out of 5. Now, I bet a lot of people, I don't know, I could have given it a 0, but I did see some other cool things in it that I liked. I don't really remember what I said about it that made me not give it a 0, but it was a pretty good movie. Oh, Downsizing was also a great movie. I loved that. I when I was looking through my list of movies and seeing what I rated them, I saw Downsizing and I was like, okay, did I give that like a 3 out of 5? Because I know I was like sort of on the fence about it. But I really enjoyed that movie because of the concept and the acting, maybe minus Kristen Wiig, because she was also in that movie too. So, yeah, I'd wonder what the world would be like if we all had to downsize. I don't want to shrink. I don't want them to shave everything and then have to go to some society where it's like all small and it's like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. And actually, speaking of that, they're doing a reboot of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Or Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves. And I was like, what? So, I don't know. Oh, I did see the recent Halloween movie again. And I actually enjoyed it the second time around. And also, speaking of Halloween, the holiday, I definitely have some big plans for that in October. So also, if you follow my channel, you know what I do every October for the whole entirety of the month. So you guys can probably try to guess what I'm going to be this year. So, and I'm really hoping that it happens because I definitely want the character I'm going to be to really just pop out at you. All right, so for my number 10 worst films, it is for Fantastic Four. I did not enjoy this movie. I feel like when they decided they wanted to reboot the franchise of Fantastic Four, that it was already dealing with production issues left and right. And it didn't matter who was in the cast, because you've got Michael B. Jordan, you've got Kate Mara, you've got Miles Teller, and what is the name of that other guy? Jamie Bell. And man, this movie, I knew from the get-go it was going to be horrible, but I didn't want to say anything negative about it before I saw it until I saw it. So I gave this movie a 1 out of 5. And then we were waiting for years and years after this movie came out. I remember they were planning on making a sequel to this movie, and I said, they are not going to make a sequel to this movie when it underperformed at the box office. And now they're rebooting Fantastic Four. So, what do you think of that? Because I am not impressed with the way Fantastic Four was handled. I felt like, they definitely had a few missteps with this franchise. And man, I actually enjoyed Shaun the Sheep, the movie, and I was shocked. I had to look back and see what I rated it. I thought I rated it really terrible, but apparently I gave that a perfect score as well. I don't know. Some of these movies I feel like if I could, I would probably change a few things about it if I saw it again. So I don't know if I'll make a series about that. But I definitely feel like some of these movies do deserve a rewatch, just so I can see if they truly are as terrible or good as some people say. So for my number 9 worst films, it is for Gods of Egypt. Now, I don't know if you guys remember this movie, but it was just horrible all around. The CGI, I was like, what? Now, I know some people nitpick CGI. I don't like to completely nitpick CGI because some people might say, it's just, using your imagination. And really, this was horrible. It looks like something just took a dump on this movie and just said, forget about it. We don't care. I didn't like the acting, Gerard Butler, Nikolai Coster-Waldau. I didn't like, what's the name of that other kid in the movie? Whatever his name is, it was just a terrible movie. This gets a 0 from me, but coincidentally, this is not the first 0 that I have ever given, and it's not the first 0 that I ever gave any movie. And I'll tell you what I probably gave my first 0 to. But this movie definitely deserved it. So I hope nobody gets a chance to see this movie. And I feel like I would recommend not seeing it because it was actually pretty boring. And it definitely put me to sleep watching it because it was just terrible concept of a movie. And all around, I just didn't care. Oh my God. And I thought I would like Nikolai Coster-Waldau in this because he is actually hot. And I do like him on Game of Thrones. However, don't even get me started on Game of Thrones. Just so you know, I'm forewarning you, I don't want to get into a huge thing about Game of Thrones unless you want me to. But man, that would be the only reason for me to see Gods of Egypt again. But now, I just decided I don't want to. So I'm going to move on to my number 8 worst films. And it is for Rough Night. Now, I've seen this movie maybe up to 2 or 3 times. I don't know what. Sometimes I like watching it, like if I'm like just really bored and I just need something to pass the time. Because there are some things about it that I do, get enjoyment out of. But man, Rough Night. It's got, once again, Kate McKinnon. She just cannot be in a comedy that is not going to flop. And I was not as impressed with it. Scarlett Johansson is in this movie as well. And of course, I actually do like the concept because now it's all about having a bachelorette party. And I just think like you see like the ramifications of having a terribly planned out bachelorette party. And oh my God, it was just, the jokes aside, just, it was not a good film. And Scarlett Johansson, I was really shocked that she would pick a movie like this. I mean, considering that basically what she's been in recently, besides the Marvel movies, were what is that movie that like she was just in, and it was like based off of a manga or something. It's like it's not even registering to me right now, but you know what I'm talking about, and I have seen that movie, so. Somebody could tell me what that movie is. That'd be pretty sweet. I don't really like Scarlett Johansson as an actress in general. I feel like I'm not as Ghost in the Shell. That's right. Ghost in the Shell was okay, but I feel like there were some things about it. It's the same thing about the whole whitewashing issue that they had for Aloha, for Emma Stone's character, and literally the same thing. It's like they really couldn't have found somebody better to be in this, and it was mostly CGI too. So it's like how much of the stunts was she actually doing that didn't look bad in post production? So I don't know. Yeah, I don't need to even think about Scarlett Johansson because she did have some other movies that I liked. I liked The Perfect Score, which was also a movie she did with Chris Evans, Captain America. So I thought like that was really cool to see that reunion. And then Lost in Translation, I also liked as well. So she's not like a terrible actress. I just think I don't like some of the movie choices that she's done. But I guess a lot of actors, they don't always pick top tier movies to work on. So I guess you can't exactly blame them. And I gave that a half heart. That was actually one of my first half hearts. So it's a 0.5 out of 5. So for my number 7 worst films, it is for Bad Moms, as well as A Bad Mom's Christmas. So I really hated those movies when they first came out, and I was really shocked after the first Bad Moms movie that they were planning on making a sequel. And I couldn't believe it because it was just so terrible. They both get zeros from me, by the way. So I have given some zeros to movies that really, truly deserve it because, I mean, the acting, and it had Mila Kunis was in it, Kristen Bell, and then as soon as the sequel comes out, then they have all these other actresses in there playing their moms, like Susan Sarandon, Kristen Baranski. I mean, I don't even know who they were trying to target these movies towards, because I mean, I was not impressed. Like, this is not a typical chick flick. This was unfunny. And then when they did the sequel, I was like, oh, really? Do you want me to just enjoy it for the holidays? Because I would burn that thing. I would burn the DVDs for all of those movies. And then I'd wish you a Merry Christmas. But nope. I would say skip those movies altogether. They're just terrible, terrible films. So, for my number 6 worst film, it is for Dirty Grandpa. Now, I don't know how many people liked this movie, so I don't know if you guys liked it or not, but me, nope. It was one of those movies. It's another movie that starred Zac Efron, if I'm not mistaken. And we all know that he does not pick the best films out there, or at least he picks a genre that he likes, even though he has had a few movies that he's been sort of on and off about. But Dirty Grandpa, that's with Robert De Niro. Now, I was really shocked that Robert De Niro would pick this movie to star in, because I mean, he is a good actor. I mean, he's done some pretty good movies in the past, and then he picks this movie, and I'm like, really? You're gonna have a scene with Aubrey Plaza at the end of the movie, and then like you're just gonna like get it on with her, and then what? I mean, really? Did I have to see that? Did we have to see that as an audience to this movie? That I gave this a 1 out of 5 because there were some parts about it that I did find funny, but overall, the movie, the whole concept, just did not impress me. It was not funny, and I almost want to like burn it out of my memory because it was just so like, it was so crass and so crude, and I just like, I didn't want to like have to see it again ever, and I actually have not seen it since then. So it's like only a one-time watch type of movie, or a nun watch. So for my number 5 worst films, it is for Hot Pursuit. No one remembers this movie because it came out like quite a few years ago. And this stars Reese Witherspoon and Sofia Vergara. And these two are not the typical comedic duo that you would ever want to see again. And I mean, what? No, Dirty Grandpa is not better than La La Land. Oh my gosh, I loved La La Land for the most part. But also, speaking of Hot Pursuit, I actually gave this movie a pretty clever nickname. And if you remember, I called it Hot Per Shit. Because that's what it was. And this movie just was not funny. It was annoying. I just couldn't like really get through it because of how lame it was. And like I've actually never seen it since I haven't seen it again since I first reviewed it. And then I literally like I feel like not a lot of people have been talking about it, and I think it's a good thing. No, don't ever talk about this movie ever again. And I would say don't see this movie. Just like forget it. Forget it ever existed. And just like that, and I gave it a 1 out of 5, as well as some other movies out there that are like kind of in the same genre but of comedy, but I don't know. They're not that funny, to be honest. So number 4 is for Unforgettable. Now, I don't know if you guys have seen this movie because I called it Forgettable because that is literally what it is. It got a 0.5 out of 5, and it stars Katherine Heigl, of all people, who like literally can't act out of a silver spoon, as well as Rosario Dawson. And this is a movie that also stars a female cast, like a dynamic duo female cast. And I just did not like this movie whatsoever. It reminded me of the movie Obsessed. And it kind of has that same concept where like one woman is sort of like going after another. And then it's just along with the terrible acting, the writing, and just the constant change of tone, I'm just like, yeah, exactly. This movie is definitely forgettable, and it had one of the worst endings possible. And so, in conclusion, I just really, I hated this movie. I literally, after the first watch, I was literally thinking to myself, why did I watch this? Why did I waste my time? It is seriously a waste of time. And especially seeing Katherine Heigl in this movie. I mean, I cannot stand her in some of her movies. Those 27 Dresses, though, is the only movie I could probably stand to watch her in and not knocked up. So this movie definitely did nothing for me. And I probably lost brain cells watching it. So I wouldn't exactly say that this movie was anything special. So now moving on to my number 3 worst films, and it is for the Human Centipede 3. Obviously, I had to put it in here because I also gave it another clever nickname like I did with Hot Pursuit, and it is Human Centipede Piece of Shit 3. And I really didn't like this movie, and I wasn't too surprised that I wasn't going to like it because I wouldn't exactly say I like the entire trilogy of Human Centipede movies, even though the first one still holds up as being the better film. Because, I mean, it's a concept of a horror movie that's like almost like too gross to watch, and you like want to throw up. You want to close your eyes watching it, or you want to cover your ears, whichever way you want to go. But man, oh my gosh, I will only stand to watch these movies at least once and then move on and then never want to see them again unless I had a death wish. So if somebody wanted to Clockwork Orange my eyes and make me watch these Human Centipede movies again, be my guest. But yes, oh my gosh, I was literally going to put The Green Inferno on this list, but then I figured, I think I might have another movie that was even worse than The Green Inferno, which is technically like Cannibal Holocaust, which I reviewed for my horror series like a couple years ago. And oh my God, that movie was so bad. Like, it made me sick to my stomach to watch it because I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe that Eli Roth would come up with a concept like this. But then he did, and then I was officially #dead. So this movie also, so Human Centipede 3 got a 1 out of 5. However, it is not the only movie that I put as my number 3. My second number 3 movie is for Mother. Now, this is a movie that stars Jennifer Lawrence, Javier Bardem, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Ed Harris. And it's a movie that is directed by Darren Aronofsky. Now, I have a friend who hates Darren Aronofsky with a passion. Jerome, where you at? And I hated this movie so much. It was slow moving. The filming style did not impress me, and the ending alone for this movie, I will not spoil it for you guys if you haven't seen it, but the ending pissed me off so freaking much. I watched this movie and I had to stop watching it. I was screaming watching it. I was just jumping up and down. I was angry. I was furious with the ending to this movie. And it is because of what they show that just really it almost felt like a stab in the heart watching it because of like the concept. I mean, Darren Aronofsky, he's made some pretty questionable movies over the years, but to make this and to put certain content in Mother that really, I couldn't believe that it was allowed. And actually, he even said in an interview, he said he wanted people to watch this movie and hate it. And I'm thinking, where is the logic in that? Why would you want people to purely I understand if you want somebody to hate what they're seeing because of of course you're gonna hate this movie. Who would love this movie? Honestly, I would not even show respect to somebody like that who just would want people to outright go in hating this movie without seeing it, because there's a reason why I didn't even give it a 0 out of 5. I would have, had I not seen some things that I actually found to be pretty creepy about it, and I'm kind of into the horror aspect of it, but man, it just went too over the top, and it was outlandish, and I really was put off by it by the end of it, that I never wanted to see it again. But then there were times, there were a few times this past week or a couple months ago where I was like, okay, I really want to see Mother again. I don't know what possessed me to say that, but I almost wanted to see it again to see if my opinion of it had changed, and I haven't seen it since. And I almost feel like that's a sign for that's a sign telling me that maybe I shouldn't see this movie. So oh God, I can't even think about this movie. So I'm gonna move on from Mother because and Jennifer Lawrence. Well, actually, there's one point with Jennifer Lawrence that I feel like she could have done a whole lot better not being in this movie, because she's also one of those actresses that has some good movies on her plate. Besides Hunger Games, Winter's Bone, Joy, American Hustle. When she works with David O. Russell versus Darren Aronofsky, I feel like she gets a much better deal in the long run. So I feel like she can be impressive. Oh, but I am not impressed with her look as Mystique for the X-Men movies, because I feel like her look has been getting really worse. So I don't know what's going to happen in Dark Phoenix. And I heard something about her maybe being killed off in that movie, because it kind of showed in the trailer, but maybe it's a it's a fake out. Maybe she really doesn't die in the movie, but we'll see. I don't know who they could possibly want to kill off, because they're basically going to kill off this X-Men franchise, and then Marvel's going to pick it up and then actually make it look cool. So we'll see. So for my number 2 worst films, it is for Vacation. Now, this is a sequel to National Lampoon's Vacation, where it's set so many years in the future. And I haven't seen the first National Lampoon's Vacation, so I don't really know. Or maybe I did. I don't remember. I haven't reviewed it, so I don't know if I've seen it or not. But I know of it. But this sequel, man, it was so unnecessary. Ed Helms was in it. Oh, and also another movie, Unnecessary Comedy, with Chris Hemsworth. And the one scene that Chris Hemsworth had in this movie, it did not impress me. It didn't even turn me on. Like, it didn't even, like, affect me, except in a negative way. So, Vacation, I was just like, what the heck? And I gave this a 0.5 out of 5. I mean, it could have flat out been a 0. I actually don't remember what I liked about it, so I hope it wasn't Chris Hemsworth, because that would suck. Because I prefer Chris Hemsworth as Thor, and I don't know if I'm planning on seeing the new Men in Black International movie, so we'll see how much Chris Hemsworth has actually changed my life over the years. But his movie choices just... This was definitely a miss for me, just like with Ghostbusters. And Ed Helms, I mean, come on. After The Hangover and maybe Tag was the only other exceptional movie that Ed Helms has been in, but this Vacation movie, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it was just so bad. I would never see it again, ever. I almost forgot it existed until I looked up the list of all the movies I've seen. All right, so who wants to see my number 1 worst films of all time that I've ever reviewed? Because I think I've sort of tried to give hints of what I wanted to put as my number 1. And like I said, it really, it wasn't a huge issue for me to figure out what I wanted to put for my number 1. And it probably was my number 1 on some of my other worst lists out there. So I'm going to do a drum roll, or you guys can do a drum roll. And it is for Knock Knock. I'm going to let that marinate too, because, man, that movie with Keanu Reeves and directed by Eli Roth and also starring Eli Roth's wife and Ana de Armas. And the concept, I mean, really? You're going to do this to Keanu? Of all people, he's like the most humbling, nicest guys and actors working today. And, I mean, come on. Keanu, you could do so much better than to act in this movie. Oh, my God. I actually wanted this to be one of my guilty pleasures, like to watch Knock Knock, even though it's like so stupid. These girls come out of nowhere, and then they like invade Keanu's space. And I mean, really, they invade his space, if you know what I mean. So I'm just thinking, why? Why would you make this movie? It was so stupid. I mean, talk about home invasion, romance gone wrong. I mean, something just was disconnected there. And then Keanu. I cannot stop talking about how bad Keanu was in this movie. And I actually felt bad for him in this movie. Not just because of what his character had to go through, but the fact that he made the choice to be in this movie. And he's actually made some pretty good... I loved him in John Wick. I saw John Wick Chapter 3 a couple of weeks ago, and I mean, he needs to stick to these types of movies. And actually, I was thinking about, you know, some of the choices of movies and roles that he's been taking on these days. And he's still like, you know, one of those mixed bag type of guys. Like he will, you know, he's most known for his, you know, playing Neo in The Matrix. And I really like those movies. So I like seeing him in more of an action type of role. I mean, he was in Speed. But then when he starts like going off of that, and he does Bill and Ted, and I can't wait to see Bill and Ted, the new movie coming out. So And I actually just saw a picture of what their kids would look like, their daughters. And I was like, oh my God, they look just like them. I wonder if it's legit or not. I actually didn't check if it was, but man, it looked so cool. The girl that plays Keanu's daughter, I think like looks just like his character. And then Keanu's like doing romantic comedies, and he's still sticking to sci-fi, but with the romantic comedy bit, I almost feel like, wow, what the heck is going on? He did a movie recently called Destination Wedding with Winona Ryder, and I was like, oh, they look so cute together. Like, they should just end up together because they look so cute. I actually haven't seen that movie, but by the trailer, Destination Wedding actually does look really just like cute and funny, and just something like, you know, whatever. Like, I really could care less if Keanu's acting in that movie was terrible. Like, I just think like that movie would be really cute because romantic comedies, they're a thing. But then he does a movie called Replicas, I think, with Alice Eve, and I saw that and I thought like that was more of his type of speed. But then he's in this Netflix movie that I actually fell asleep watching, and it's not because it was so boring, but you know, because it was really late when I saw it and I just dozed off. But he's in this movie with Randall Park, and he does this scene where he walks in and he's just so cool, and he's got like these like nerd shades on. He's got the all black, and he looks so cool, and it's like he almost looks like he's overacting the scene, but then he just, I don't know, there's just something about his presence on screen that's like kind of funny, but it's also kind of like weird in a way. So I don't know if you're like into that sort of thing. But actually, I just saw, speaking of that scene from that show, I saw this whole like compilation, like somebody made a Twitter account dedicated to that one scene where he does the walk-in in that show. And then they're setting it to all sorts of music. And I was thinking, okay, well, this works because it's sort of like old 80s music, and it definitely works with that like sort of disco type of music. And I actually requested a song that they should put, but man, Keanu, come on now. Just come out with John Wick Chapter 4, and I will forgive you for Knock Knock any day, but maybe not. I'd have to actually watch Knock Knock again, and then maybe I'll forgive him. But John Wick Chapter 4 is happening, people, so I can't wait for that. And then Bill and Ted's coming out. Keanu, he's getting back on the map, so I really can't wait for that. So now I am going to move on to something that I literally don't know how it's going to go. And actually, this was requested, my boyfriend requested this topic of discussion called favorite movie series. Now, a lot of people might have very varying opinions on what their favorite movie series is, because there are just so many to choose from, or so little, depending on the person. But I was very conflicted on what my favorite movie series was, because I do like the Harry Potter series. I love the X-Men series. I love I don't love the Twilight series, and I have liked the 50 Shades trilogy. Don't hate me. And now I was very conflicted. The only two series that I'm sure is on everybody's minds are Marvel versus DC. Now, which one do you think I'm gonna pick? The logical choice would probably be Marvel, because of their track record of 11 years and all of like 20-something movies in 11 years. And they just seem to be contributing to global stardom, and now they just cannot be beat. They cannot be stopped. So I'm going to have to go with DC. So as much as I would like to say the negative side to this, I would like to talk about the positive side to me liking DC, and that being my choice for favorite movie series. Now, the DCU has been a mixed bag for a lot of people. Some people just want to forget it existed altogether. But ever since they made Man of Steel, I said, okay, I'll have to move on from Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight trilogy, move on to a new franchise, and just see where this all goes. Now, when Man of Steel came out, I really enjoyed seeing that take on Superman. Of course, Henry Cavill, I think, definitely looks the part, and he definitely pulled it off nicely. And yet, the movie underperformed. So, why is it that people want to see another Superman movie? People say, oh, hashtag not my Superman. I don't even know if that was a thing back in 2012 or whenever this movie came out. And then you've got the people saying, oh, but I love Christopher Reeve Superman. So they're just going to ignore that Henry Cavill exists. I personally enjoyed the movie because of how different it was. I mean, yeah, sure, it was darker in tone, but it also showed a different side to Superman than we have ever seen before. And you have a Superman who he is almost like a fish out of water. Like, he's the type of guy who, how would you react if you knew that an alien was living on planet Earth? And yeah, Zack Snyder directed it, and a lot of people are now saying, like, Zack Snyder needs to just go away and fall off the face of the earth. I don't personally think so. Because I've enjoyed some of Zack Snyder's films that he's made, like Dawn of the Dead 2004 and Watchmen. I've enjoyed those movies. But then when it comes to the DC universe, I mean, it definitely felt different, but also Christopher Nolan, who did the Dark Knight trilogy, produced Man of Steel. And I think it was because he was a fan of Superman, if I'm not mistaken. So he wanted to come up with a movie that, everybody would want to see, and it was different. And apparently people weren't so keen on seeing something so different. Because now that they've seen what they can do with the comic book universe or the comic book genre for films, like, because Marvel started theirs in 2008. That's when Iron Man came out. And that was also the same year that The Dark Knight came out. I really enjoyed The Dark Knight for what it was. I think it still holds up as one of the best comic book movies of all time. Even though it was set sort of like in this grounded reality, it still holds up as a really well done film. And I think it is the best, and obviously it is the best of the Dark Knight trilogy, so Man of Steel was a good start to this DCEU, which, by the way, has been changing its sort of name. So it's like you have the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and then people dub the DC Universe DCEU. But now it's Worlds of DC, so I don't know exactly where they're planning on going with this series, but when you have what comes after Man of Steel, so then you have Batman v Superman, and I was really excited to see that. And I really liked how they combined Superman and then Batman. Of course, I am a huge fan of Ben Affleck, and I'm going to get really upset if I talk about Batman anymore just because he's no longer playing Batman. So I feel really, it almost feels like a disservice to not have his character finish off with more films, especially after the fallout of Justice League. But man, I mean, I enjoyed Batman v Superman for what it was, even though, yes, I will admit it does have flaws. So I'm not completely, hating on it, but I also want to be critical of it just because that's what I need to do. So, And also, what was another good thing about Batman v Superman was the introduction to Wonder Woman. Seeing Gal Gadot be cast as Wonder Woman was one of the best decisions I would say Zack Snyder ever made. Even though he hasn't exactly made a lot of the best decisions for this universe. I mean, he did have some interesting ideas. But then I think after a while, I noticed, especially with Justice League, what he was really planning on doing before he got off the project, and then it got taken care of, and the reshoots were done by Joss Whedon. Man, I mean, I don't know if you guys want to hear me talk about Justice League, but I'll talk about it because Justice League, now that was a mess. There's no denying that. Justice League had this 2-hour mandate. It felt completely rushed, and introducing even more characters besides continuing the character arcs for Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman, who is pretty much out of the movie for the majority of the film. And then you add Aquaman, you have The Flash, and then you have Cyborg. The main issue that I had with Justice League was the fact that it just cut constantly. And even though, like, I'm so, like, it's almost disappointing. I'm still disappointed to this day that Justice League ended up the way it did, but I still wanted to support the DC universe because I still love these characters. I still want to support seeing them together, but I also am a firm believer in seeing them done the right way. And I think some better justice, pun intended, should have been done on these characters and this movie in general. And I feel like they just didn't handle them right. And this was all because of the mismanagement at Warner Brothers and the heads of Warner Brothers wanting to rush out Justice League so that they could, get their end of the year bonus. And that's what I found to be just so terrible. Like, they could have done so much better. But also bringing in Joss Whedon, the guy who directed one of the billion-dollar Marvel films called The Avengers, another team-up movie. I mean, yeah, I know. When The Avengers came out, they had all these other solo films come out before then. Now, that was something that I feel like the DC universe would have benefited from had they gone that route. But they didn't want to because they didn't want to copy Marvel, and that's their choice. So now, post Justice League, and I don't even know if you guys want to hear me talk about Suicide Squad because we all know how that turned out, but I still enjoyed watching Suicide Squad just because it's different. Like, we've never seen a movie with, like, straight up villains in the movie. But also, I do want to mention about Suicide Squad that Jared Leto's Joker, despite not really seeing him a lot in the movie, I definitely hope to see more of him in the future, even though we have another Joker movie coming out with Joaquin Phoenix this October, which is clearly a one-shot and has nothing to do with the current DCU slate, but we never know. Sometimes false information can spread like a wildfire, so we don't know what's actually going to happen until the movie comes out. But I think it's pretty much a one-shot, so I don't know. I am looking forward to seeing it, so we'll see. I was originally hesitant on seeing the Joker movie, but now I'm kind of, like, sold on it, especially by that trailer. I mean, that trailer was something else. That was like something out of the Dark Knight trilogy. And then Suicide Squad happened. I feel like now that they're coming out with a sequel to Suicide Squad, we'll see what happens and what characters they add. I will definitely talk about more Suicide Squad stuff once they release some information, but that's why it sucks that they're not going to Comic-Con this year. Warner Brothers needed to address these things. We wanted to hear more about Wonder Woman 1984. We wanted to hear more about the Suicide Squad or the Batman starring Robert Pattinson. Don't even get me started on that. But man, after Justice League, there is hope. Because we had Wonder Woman before Justice League. She got her own movie. And I think that still holds up as being one of the better DCU movies. And I obviously enjoyed it. But now, after Justice League, we had Aquaman. Now, I love that movie. I really enjoyed Aquaman. It was disappointing to see it get snubbed at the Oscars for visual effects, but man, that movie, I just saw it not that long ago, and I really loved it because of the visuals alone. And of course, Jason Momoa is hot, so he definitely made a perfect Aquaman. And it also made $1 billion. So congratulations, DC, for finally getting your first $1 billion movie. And so other than that, we've also got Shazam. And that movie comes out on Blu-ray, I think, in either at the end of this month or next month sometime. I'm definitely getting that Blu-ray because it was just another funny type of movie. And it's very telling of seeing, after Justice League, the direction that Warner Brothers wants to go in with these movies and make them, instead of darker, they want to, have them be more comical and not be exactly like a Marvel copycat type of movie. Because I definitely noticed that in both Aquaman and Shazam, that these movies had a mixed bag of dark and light tones. And if they keep doing that, that's totally fine. But a movie like Batman, starring Robert Pattinson, needs to be dark. I want to see the darkness come back, especially for a character like Batman, because, oh my God, Justice League, I swear, they tarnished his character in that movie. And Ben Affleck, I felt so bad for him being this, the butt of every joke. And I thought that was supposed to be Aquaman until his movie came out, and he just blew everybody out of the water. And so, I mean, I'm really nervous about the Batman movie, but I still have hope that, he can actually pull off this role. And I actually saw a Robert Pattinson movie called Cosmopolis, and I thought it was really good. It really showed his, the Bruce Wayne side to his character. He can definitely pull off Bruce Wayne. But I would definitely want to see more from that. And then I also saw The Rover, and I really enjoyed that movie too. I know there's a couple Robert Pattinson movies that some people recommended to me, what's that movie with Charlie Hunnam and The Lost City of Z. And I really want to see that movie, so I hope I get a chance to see it. And also Water for Elephants, I need to see that too. So we'll see what Matt Reeves does with the Batman movie. And that's why I'm so bummed that they're not going to be at Comic-Con, because they could have addressed some of these things. But if they're just still in the process of, getting things started and filmed, then they need to hurry up, because some people are getting impatient. And you know what happens when people get impatient? They start rioting. And we saw a bunch of that happen in the movie Cosmopolis, and it was pretty crazy. So it's going to end up like that. I should make a meme for that. I think that'd be really hilarious. It's this is what happens when you don't show us anything for the Batman starring Robert Pattinson. And then it's a picture from the movie Cosmopolis. I mean, I'm definitely going to make it. I'll have to remember to do that. So, yeah, I'd be really curious to see where they go forward with the DCU, because they have a lot of movies that they have yet to announce, or that they're sort of early in development, like that Ava DuVernay movie, New Gods. And I don't really think it's necessary to make that movie, but we'll see if it brings up anything that has to do with Darkseid. I'm cool with that, because they need to address some things from Justice League. Once again, missed opportunities all around, but there is hope. And that's what the S stands for on Superman's suit. It stands for hope. So maybe there is hope that the DCU can turn itself around and be better. So I'm still going to support it, from this day forward. So for my next category, and actually it is going to be the second to last category before I'm going to let you all go. And it is for my most and least anticipated movies of 2019, and basically whatever I've seen so far, and have they exceeded my expectations. So I'm going to start off with my most anticipated movies. Now, so for my list of most anticipated movies that I've had so far, that I had put together for this year, it was for my number 10 being Star Wars Episode 9. Then you have Aladdin, Captain Marvel, Hellboy, It Chapter 2, Avengers Endgame, Detective Pikachu, Godzilla King of the Monsters, which I actually just saw, and The Lion King, and then Shazam. So for my number 10 is Star Wars Episode 9. For my number 1 most anticipated was for Shazam. And so what I've seen so far, my honorable mentions would be for Us, and it would be ranked number 1. And when I saw that movie, I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. Now, I really enjoyed Jordan Peele's Get Out. So then I was really excited to see Us. And when that came out, I literally didn't know what to expect. And I was really glad that they didn't really show too many trailers from this movie. So it got me even more excited to see, what he was going to do next and how he was going to be able to pull it off. And it was just so cool. It was still a mixed bag of horror and suspense and thriller and maybe a bit of comedy. Had a good cast: Lupita Nyong'o, Winston Duke, and them once again reuniting since Black Panther. And I think this movie was just pretty amazing. And so, okay. For my next honorable mention, it is for Glass. Now, this M. Night Shyamalan movie, I know a lot of people have a thing or two to say about M. Night Shyamalan as a director, but I think because he actually was able to make a trilogy, I thought was pretty impressive. And I was a fan of Unbreakable, as well as Split, starring James McAvoy, who I have actually been a huge fan of. Recently, I've probably, my record, this is probably me standing for James McAvoy. I saw, and I'm not even kidding, I watched 6 or 7 of his movies in under a month. And it was just so crazy that I couldn't get enough of his character in Split, that I was just so obsessed, maybe too obsessed. But then Glass came out, and I was like, oh my god, I get to see him again as this character with the multiple personalities. And then seeing him alongside Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson from Unbreakable, I was like, okay, this is the unconventional superhero movie that we needed, that didn't have anything to do with Marvel or DC or Fox or whatever. And this is what we got. However, the ending to the movie ruined it for me, and it made me so sad. And I'm not going to spoil it if you haven't seen this movie, but oh my gosh, this movie was crazy. I mean, it made me hate Sarah Paulson's character, but I just thought it was really cool to see how they were all going to interact with each other, and just seeing how grown up the boy who plays Bruce Willis's son from Unbreakable, and seeing that was just, oh my god. But I still love this movie. If there was any movie that I would buy, it would probably be Glass, because it's just that good. And I actually have the movie Split, so I want to complete that collection and then maybe get Unbreakable when I see it again. So I'll definitely do that. And then, so some of my other movies that I saw from my most list was Dumbo. Now, this movie, I wasn't a huge fan, to be honest, of the animated film. That I feel like what they did with this movie in the end, they just, I don't know, it just felt so different. And I know they were trying to add some things that maybe weren't in the animated film and making the human characters more likable. Like, I don't even care who was casting it. Tim Burton directed this movie, so you know he's going to reunite with Danny DeVito and Eva Green. Still didn't really do it for me, but there were some things that I enjoyed about this movie. So, and of course, Dumbo's being one of the cutest little baby elephants I've ever seen. But this movie, I only gave it a 3 out of 5, and it was just an average movie, so I wasn't completely hating on it. So for my next movie that I saw is for John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum. No, I know, I saw this movie, and like I've been saying, Keanu Reeves, I think, definitely is suited better to doing these types of movies, these action type of roles, instead of like romantic comedies and whatever else he does. But these ones, like this, really put him on the map to be one of the better action stars. And so I ranked this as my honorable mention number 6, and I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. And it was that good. So it really does make me excited to see John Wick Chapter 4 and just seeing more of this, level of performance, I think would also be really nice to see. And I want to see if they could raise the bar, because I know that some franchises tend to take it too far. Like, the more movies they make in a franchise, they try to raise the bar, but then sometimes things get too outlandish and zany. I mean, for example, the Fast and Furious franchise. Now, that movie series, I feel like, has gotten crazier and crazier as each movie has gone on. Especially with the Fate of the Furious. Now, that one was crazy. There was something about a submarine and a female villain in the form of Charlize Theron. However, it got too outlandish, to say the least. But then I'm a fan of the Mission Impossible franchise too. So I know, like, when they raise the bar, like, they definitely pull it off really nicely. So, like, Mission Impossible Fallout, one of my favorite Mission Impossible movies of all time. And we'll see if that gets any more movies in the future. I think it'd be really cool to see Tom Cruise do that again. I mean, so it's like, if you compared Keanu Reeves to Tom Cruise, who do you like better? And I don't know. I would say I still like Keanu. I don't know. I mean, Tom Cruise definitely he's a madman when he, like, wants to pull off his own stunts. Because I know for a fact that Keanu Reeves didn't exactly do all of his own stunts too. But I mean, Tom Cruise is one of the craziest guys out there. Like, he'll jump out of a plane and he'll just say, "Let's do it," and then they film it, and then boom, it just looks so awesome. And both of those movies have good cinematography as well. So my next movie, which was my 7th honorable mention, was the Lego Movie 2. I liked the first Lego movie, and I feel like this movie, I mean, it was okay. Like, in some parts I enjoyed better than others, but I still enjoyed it overall. So I found, like, that was pretty impressive. And then it had more songs that I found to be really catchy too. And of course, I'm a huge fan of Legos. I used to play with them when I was a kid. So I definitely, have fond memories, and it makes me want to see more movies like this. And I feel like it was just really creative when they made these movies. So I think, like, that's pretty much all I would say about that. And then I would give this a 3.5 out of 5. Okay, so for my next movie, it is for Shazam. Now, obviously, like I said, that was my number 1 movie on my list. And there's really not much else to say other than it just looked really cool. I mean, it was directed by David F. Sandberg, and he's notably a horror director, just like James Wan did for Aquaman. And I really enjoyed this movie because, I mean, it's just like one of those like DC movies that you didn't think would end up like being on the big screen, because I mean, it felt like big. It was set during Christmas time, but they released it in April. So I'm like, okay, if it was in July, then you'd be saying it is like Christmas in July. But I wouldn't have wanted to wait that long to see a DC film, because now, after Shazam came out, there's no more DC movies coming out until next year. So that's kind of disappointing, but this movie definitely was not. And I can't wait to see them give this movie a sequel, because they definitely had a lot of world building in this movie. And now we've got Godzilla, King of the Monsters. That was my number 2 ranking, and I recently saw this, and I was really glad that I did. So I wasn't a huge fan of Godzilla growing up, but then when I saw the Godzilla movie that came out like quite a few years ago, I thought that was one of the coolest movies I had ever seen. And then Kong Skull Island came out, and I knew right then it was all going to be set in the same universe. So we've got this like Monarch universe coming out, and then now with this movie, I mean, it definitely raised the bar. I mean, if you haven't seen this movie, I don't want to spoil it for you guys who haven't seen it, but it is just so action-packed. There are more monsters coming out of the woodwork, and then there is a possibility that we could see more of these types of movies in the future, starting with Godzilla versus King Kong, which comes out, I don't know why, off the top of my head, but I can't wait to see that movie as well, because I'd like to see who really is the king of the monsters, because we all saw Godzilla be the king of the monsters up against all these other guys. And I mean, there were times when I was thinking, is he going to make it? Is Godzilla okay? But, I mean, we definitely sort of got spoiled beforehand because of this Godzilla versus King Kong movie coming out and being in development. I definitely want to see that. So I gave Godzilla, King of the Monsters, a 2.5 out of 5. And actually, a lot of people weren't even impressed with this movie. Some people were. I don't think the critics were impressed with it as much as, like, true fans were. But, I mean, yeah, like, it'll suck, like, after Godzilla versus Kong. I mean, sometimes all good things must come to an end, unfortunately. And I don't know. I mean, they need to figure it out. And actually, Warner Brothers is distributing these movies. So Warner Brothers, get your together, and then let's see some of these franchises actually, be molded into something great. Okay, so then for my next one, my rank number 3 is for Avengers Endgame. Now, I gave this movie a perfect score because, like I said, it is just like there's nothing bad about it. I literally, my expectations were set pretty high for this movie, and I was just really impressed with it, and just everything just like hits you really hard. Like, it hits you in the feels. You feel like you've been there since the beginning, and you've watched like everybody go on this journey with each individual Marvel film, and that is literally what they did for this movie. They just brought it all full circle, literally, with portals. And it was so impressive, and just like what they did with this movie, and going back in time, and just like revisiting some of the scenes from their other Marvel films. I thought was just really cool to see as well. So there's really not much else to say about it, but so I'm going to move on to my ranked number 4, and it is for Hellboy. Now, originally, I was sort of like on the fence about wanting to see this movie. And then as it got closer to the release date, I was like, okay, I'm really excited about it. David Harbour as Hellboy is quite a change from Ron Perlman, but I think he does pull off the character pretty well. And I actually said that in my review. I think he did a pretty fantastic job. However, the end result was I gave this movie a 2.5 out of 5. And I think that had something to do with, some parts being a little bit cheesier than others, and it was just like some parts were weird, but also really cool at the same time. So it was like kind of like balancing out, like, okay, I love it, I hate it, love it, but that's literally what I gave it. So to go on to my number 5 most anticipated film is for Captain Marvel. Now, like I said before with Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow, I wasn't too impressed with her portrayal as that character, and I feel like sometimes the female Marvel characters don't impress me too much. I think it just depends on the character. But Captain Marvel, Brie Larson, I was not impressed with her one bit. I think I liked her character a little bit better in Avengers Endgame, but for her own movie, I feel like she really she didn't pull off the character as well as I expected her to. And I don't know, it's just like she was just terrible. I don't know. I mean, I can't even put my thoughts together thinking, because I think it was just like my mind is thinking, oh my gosh, she was just so bad. And that's all I can literally say. There's just nothing. She can look good in the outfit, but then her facial expressions just suck. I mean, I don't want to sound like a complete hater, but I don't know if you guys were fans of Captain Marvel, because I know that this was also one of those movies that people were on the fence about. So I was not impressed with it. But at least she sort of proved me wrong in Avengers Endgame. So I hope I never really see another movie with her again, as far as Captain Marvel goes. And now for my ranked number 6, it is for Aladdin. Now, I also just saw this movie too, and I really loved it. So I'm really glad that I saw it. And I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. And it wasn't exactly a perfect film. If you watch my review, you'll know why. But I think because I've been a Disney fan, I've been impressed with their live action films, I feel like this movie definitely exceeded all my expectations and gave me a little bit of, something extra. I mean, Will Smith as the genie was the one big thing that was on everybody's mind. Was he going to do a good job? Was he going to be better than Robin Williams? But nobody can pull off a Robin Williams genie than Robin Williams. And so I liked when Will Smith, gave his own sort of personality to the character, as well as maybe a little bit of a Fresh Prince of Bel-Air vibes. So I also really like that as well. And hearing the same songs as well as, a new song that Jasmine sings, I thought that was also really done. She was really good too. I think she was like the best part of the movie. And so now for my least anticipated movies of this year, I only have one movie because everything else that I had on there originally just hasn't come out yet. And so the movies that I had on my least anticipated films of 2019 list were Joker, Dark Phoenix, New Mutants, Artemis Fowl, Men in Black International, Charlie's Angels, Terminator 6, Alita Battle Angel, Sonic the Hedgehog, and Frozen 2. And actually, a couple of the movies on this list aren't even coming out either this year, got pushed back, like Sonic the Hedgehog, New Mutants, and I'm pretty sure Artemis Fowl also got pushed back, but I'm not exactly sure. So for Alita Battle Angel, I ranked that as my number 8. And I gave it a 4 out of 5. I actually was hesitant to see this movie, but I'm actually really glad that I did, because I actually was so blown away by it. The visuals alone impressed me. And I didn't really know much about this character. So, I don't know. I mean, it was just such a cool movie. And ironically, James Cameron had something to do with this movie. He didn't direct it. So at least that's a good thing. But Alita Battle Angel, I think, is a movie that I would love to see them expand more on as far as other movies go. So this would be the only exception for a movie I think that deserves a sequel. Or I've heard like, oh, maybe they should do something on Netflix or put it like straight to animation, like 2D animation. I think it'd be really cool. So we'll see. I think it does have potential to have something else going for it. Now, for the final thing I'm going to do before I go, I'm so mad. I should have brought some water with me because I'm like parched right now. But so the final thing I'm going to do is talk about my DVD and Blu-ray collection. This haul that I did, I make haul videos for my DVDs and Blu-rays that I get occasionally. And I just decided, well, since I have like so few that I got recently, that I'll just put them to this video. And so I have 3 movies that I got. So my first DVD that I got was Spy. And I got this for Christmas as a Christmas gift. And I was like, I really want this movie because it was just so funny. And also, like I said, this is a Paul Feig movie. And it stars Melissa McCarthy, Jude Law, Jason Statham, and Rose Byrne. And I really enjoyed it. I think that this movie, I mean, it was funny for what it was. I gave it a 5 out of 5, I think. I actually don't remember why I rated it, but it was so good. I mean, I laughed my head off watching this all the time. I think it's one of my guilty pleasures, so I definitely enjoyed watching that. Now, my first Blu-ray I'm going to talk about is a DC film called Justice League, and I had to complete my collection. I've gotten every other DC movie so far, so I had to get this movie on Blu-ray because I needed to add it to my collection. And I heard a few rumors that they might be announcing, well, actually they would have probably announced something at Comic-Con about releasing the Snyder Cut of this movie, even though it technically is directed, it says directed by Zack Snyder. So I don't know what anybody's talking about. There is no Snyder Cut, by the way. Like there just isn't, and they're not going to invest in a new version of this just to suit the needs of everybody else. Even though I would have loved to see what they would have done, but you know, sometimes we should just let the past stay in the past, or let the past die. I feel like, didn't they say that in some movie? I'm trying to remember which movie it was. Let the past die. And so now, yeah. So the Snyder Cut will never come to fruition. And now, for my next and final DC movie that I got on Blu-ray recently was Aquaman. Now, I love this movie. I had to buy this movie because it just looks so glorious on the big screen. And the visuals are just so impressive. I love the quality of this. And I even, it says, includes exclusive sneak peek of Shazam. And that movie comes out on Blu-ray, so it's going to be even more exciting to get that. But I also watched some of the behind-the-scenes stuff. I think like they have a lot of good behind-the-scenes from for the bonus features. I think it all like looks really cool. So if you don't have this Blu-ray, sucks for you, but I personally enjoy it. So I hope to get more Blu-rays and DVDs in the future. I definitely have a whole list planned of things I want to get. So that was my collection and some of my thoughts on movies that I've either reviewed or wanted to see in the future coming out this year. So I just want to say thank you guys for tuning in and sending in your questions. I hope I answered some of the questions you guys had and comments that you made. So I really appreciate it, and thank you for giving me support over the past 7 years. And I definitely can't wait to enjoy another 7 years, hopefully, on the Lauren Loves Movies channel. So thank you guys so much. And as always, you guys can subscribe to my channel. I've got more movie reviews, movie updates coming every week for a Trial Thursday video. You guys can also like me on Facebook and follow me on Twitter. And I will see you guys later. Bye.